Taxing churches, well, it's an interesting thought, but it might not be the solution that everyone was hoping for. I'm tagging a person I respect in this video because I'm responding to their video about taxing churches. This person is an excellent person, so I encourage you to follow the person and to show lots of kindness to this person. They're high quality. Policies on taxation vary from area to area. I think you had mentioned that churches don't pay property tax. Where I am, they pay some property tax. So they do not pay tax on the building. They do not pay tax on the lot on which the building sits. Everything else is taxable. The entire parking lot is taxable. A megachurch could use in the range of 1,000 or more parking stalls. That is going to cost them a chunk of change for property tax. Now let's take a peek at what that would look like if churches paid income tax. You would have to look at taxing a church like you tax a business, because it's not a person's income. Like when I get a check for having worked for a month, in most cases the employer will have deducted the income tax from that check. So I'm paying tax all the time. Now, if you own a business, you don't pay tax if your expenses are higher than your income. And churches would need to be taxed like businesses, not like individuals receiving a salary. Some of the deductions that would have to be included are deductions for heating, electricity, deductions for things like salaries for the church administrative assistant, salaries for janitors, salaries for the clergy, and there would also need to be deductions for promotion for the church. That's stuff like advertising the local community. Those are all direct church business expenses. Most churches that I've attended have run a small deficit almost every single year, rarely making as much as the budget requires. They may come close, but generally not quite getting there. Some churches will meet their budget, but it's not very common that you'll see a church exceeding their budget by a large amount. So what I'm saying is, I don't think you'd see churches paying much income tax if they were being taxed on their income. Churches have been allowed a lot of grace when it comes to paying taxes because they provide quite a bit of social services assistance for people who need some kind of support to get through life. In some cases, it amounts to counseling from professional counselors. In some cases, it amounts to things like helping a person pay their rent because they can't afford the rent, or helping people get food. There are churches that literally prepare hundreds of sandwiches for people every single week. There is something that's kind of related to all of this. Governments intentionally underfund social agencies and government programs. So I'm going to give you an example. In 1980, where I live, there was a temporary program set up because the province had run into a terrible financial situation. People were walking away from their homes so they couldn't pay the mortgages, and the homes were worth less than what they'd paid for the mortgage because the economy had tanked. The government was not doing enough to help, so what happened then in 1980 was they set up a food bank as a temporary solution to help families get enough food to eat. 43 years later, we still have food banks because the government is deliberately underfunding the programs that need to be there that will provide financial assistance that's adequate for people to have a good diet. There are a number of non-governmental social service agencies in the region where I live. Most of those were started by or are operated by religious organizations, Christian denominations, Protestant and Catholic, Jewish social services, and the list goes on and on. It's because the government is not providing the supports that need to be there. So here's my take. Income tax will not do much because most churches will not have a high enough income level to be paying income tax. And if you look at charging more money for land tax so that parking lots and buildings both are taxed, that would help the government some with tax revenue. It's not going to make an enormous difference, I don't think. I would be in favor of churches paying taxes on this condition. The governments no longer look to churches to fill in the gaps for programs that they are intentionally underfunding. The government needs to do its job and not rely on churches to do the job.